Team USA, as our name implies, is dedicated to learning about listening to and honoring those who serve our country. Today we are pleased to welcome a true hero, Captain Zacharia Fike. He has served in the military for 16 years with combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. He earned a Purple Heart on September 11, 2010 in Afghanistan. Captain Fike comes from a family of heroes. He is proof that bravery and service might be inherited. His grandfather served in the Philippines. His father, a veteran of Vietnam, served 26 years in the Army and retired as a command sergeant major. His mother was one of the first female drill sergeants in the Army. 2 of his uncles served in Vietnam and 2 served in World War II. He currently has 6 descendants of the American Revolution and 1 that served during the War of 1812. He also has a long line that fought during the Civil War. Yet, Captain Fike has gone beyond serving his country. He serves our country's heroes. Captain Fike reunites with their well-deserved medals. Please help me in welcoming Captain Fike to Team USA.
How's everyone doing?
Good.
You can do better than that. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Awesome. That was very moving to hear you guys sing. I don't get emotional, but that was pretty emotional. Believe it or not so many schools across our country are doing programs like that you're doing here today. And as a soldier who's defending our country, both overseas and here in the States, it means the world to me to see that. And you guys made my whole year, honestly. You made my day, you made my week, you made my month. You made the whole year special just to witness you guys sing that song. So, I've been told I can speak for about 4 hours. Are you guys ready for that? You can't sleep. You got to pay attention the whole time. And you each have to answer or ask 10 questions each. Can you do that? Okay. As you can see, I like to keep these things fun and entertaining. So by all means, stop me as I'm talking if I don't make any sense whatsoever. My wife has to do it all the time when she doesn't understand what I'm saying. So feel free to speak up and say, hey, what does that mean? We'll start off by talking about the Purple Heart. Raise your hand if you know what a Purple Heart is. All right, how do you know what a Purple Heart is?
Well, Mr. D talks about it all the time in class. So.
Okay. Anyone else?
It's people that get like if they're losing a leg or arm, they
Okay.
get Purple Heart.
So they shed their blood. Okay. That's extreme, losing an arm or a leg. You never want to see that happen, but unfortunately, it is reality. You, sir.
Wounded in battle.
Wounded in battle. Good one. What else?
Yeah, wounded in battle.
Wounded in battle. Anyone else? We're missing a key one.
Isn't it wounded in action?
Battle action, same. Yep. Combat, all the same. How about you? Don't be shy. What happens when a soldier doesn't come home? So those are called posthumous Purple Hearts. It means a soldier died in combat. So the 2 ways a soldier, he or she, can earn a Purple Heart is either shed their blood, or be wounded in action, or they don't come home, they die. So very depressing to think about, but when it comes to war, it's a reality. And there's young men and women across the country who accept that reality for us every day. And that's very special. And we should do everything we can to honor them. Does anyone know how the Purple Heart started? Any guesses? Think back in the time in the history. You had your hand kind of go up. That was a happy.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Was it like because people was it soldiers weren't feeling like special enough, so they wanted to give them something to recognize who was wounded and
Kind of.
lost?
Kind of. That's a good start. Anyone else? Think about a president. Who's one of our most famous presidents?
George Washington,
George Washington. How did you know that?
because he was the first
You just picked the first one?
No, he was just the
It's a
famous
good start.
president.
So General George Washington, did everyone know that he was a general before he was a president?
Yeah.
Okay, so he was an army man. And he commanded the entire Continental Forces in the, what war? Revolutionary War. All right, now his headquarters was not too far from here in New York. So about 6 hours away was his headquarters. And he wanted to develop a medal that honored soldiers not for being wounded or not for being killed, but for honor. Does anyone know what medal that is today that we use to award honor?
The Medal of Honor?
The Medal of Honor is our nation's highest decoration. But back then, it wasn't in existence yet. So what it was a cloth patch shaped in a heart, purple in color, and on the front said merit. Who do you think made that stitching? Do you think Mick can stitch? Not very well.
Woman.
So who usually picks up the slack for us men?
Woman.
So who was George Washington's wife? Come on, I can't
Washington.
forget the wife.
Martha Washington.
Martha Washington, there you go. Man, if you remember anything, always give credit to the women in your life, to include your mother and your wife one day, okay? You'll live a long life if you do that, trust me. So she stitched these, what they call military merit badges. And those were awarded to 3 soldiers from Connecticut. And again, they were just more so for honor. They weren't necessarily for being wounded. That went away for around 100 years. And it wasn't until 1931, General Douglas MacArthur. Who knows General Douglas MacArthur? Anyone ever heard that name before? You have. Are you the history buff in the class? Okay. What was he famous for?
Well, I can do a few things. One, he burned a bunch of camps of veterans.
Okay, that's probably not a good thing to remember. What
The
else?
evil man, I say.
Anything else?
No.
Anyone?
It's not about that.
Okay. What else? Anyone? He was our nation's first. How many star general was he? What's the highest general in the armed forces? Nope.
5.
5. Does anyone know we have 5-star generals? He was the first. He also was a veteran of World War I. In World War I, he was a wounded veteran. So he wanted to do something to honor veterans from World War I. And he pushed Congress to design the medal that we know today. Does everyone know what a Purple Heart looks like? We have one. None of you have ever seen a Purple Heart. Picture at least. All right, I'm going to pass one around so that you guys can touch it, feel it, hold it. Give me a second. Now, keeping with the badge of military merit, they kept a few designs the same. All right, obviously the color is purple. And on the front, whose bust is on the front? George Washington. So when it comes around, make sure you look at that. And if you look on the back, it says for military merit. All right. Now this was first issued February 22nd, 1932. And how many of you think of these have been awarded in our nation's history? Take a guess.
4,000.
Hundreds of thousands.
How many?
Thousands.
Thousands? Keep going.
Millions?
No, not that many.
Okay.
Keep going.
500,000.
Dang it.
Keep going.
800,000.
Keep going.
1 million? Is it?
Keep going.
Oh.
Close enough. 1.8 million.
Wow.
1.8 million soldiers in our nation's history have either sacrificed their lives or shed their blood on the field of combat for us, for me and you. Right? It's very serious. It's a very astonishing number to think about. So I'm going to pass this around, make sure everyone sees it. Feel free to touch it, turn it over. And it's a very sacred treasure for anyone to earn. Obviously, you don't want to earn it. A lot of times we call it the slow man's badge in the Army. Why would we call it that? No, because you didn't run fast enough. Or being tall, you didn't dunk quick enough. Does that make sense? It's not something you want to earn. So after the award, they first issued the first 100,000 to soldiers of World War I. Believe it or not, these soldiers, again, at that time, didn't have anything that they were essentially presented. So they had to wait 16 years. So the World War I ended what year? Anyone? 1819?
Yeah.
So if they didn't get their medal until 1932, that's a good guess. 1932, that's 15, 16 years after the fact they first got their decoration. And what the government would do was engrave their names on the back of the medal to identify who it belonged to. That also started in World War II, and when soldiers didn't come home, how were families notified? Does anyone know?
They used to give like an American flag.
Okay, that's done at the funeral. What else?
Like a telegram?
Telegram. Do you think that's very personable to deliver a telegram? How do you think you would tell a family if their loved one wasn't coming home?
Have someone like another soldier they know.
Okay. Yep.
Would they have like a group of soldiers that were like with him at the time go and say that?
Today, yes, but back then they were so far away it was hard to have soldiers come back. So what they do today, go ahead.
I was going to say when soldiers have something that they're left with.
Yep, exactly. They have what they call a casualty assistance officer. So a young captain like myself would come to your door and unfortunately have the burden of telling your parents that maybe your brother wasn't coming home. Very difficult to deal with. But in World War II, we had so many young men and women dying by the day, we didn't have the resources available to do that. So they used telegrams. Who delivers telegrams? The postman. So the postman would deliver a telegram telling you that your loved one wasn't coming home. It's very impersonal. And then 30 to 60 days after the fact, this Purple Heart medal would arrive in the mail. And I want you to see what it came in. So the Purple Heart box would come in a cardboard box, and there was some certificates with it that came in a tube, and I'll pass those around as well. But this is what you would receive. A box, a tube, in memory of your loved one. So very impersonal during those times. We'll pass those around. And you'll see on them, they just have the address. And these actually belong to a soldier, so please treat them very well. Those actually were delivered to a family back in 1944. Some of the items that came in those were, of course, the Purple Heart that we just mentioned. And very gruesome stuff, but I think it's important to teach you is, what do soldiers wear around their necks? Dog tags, right? How many? Somebody said 5. Who said 5? Why 5?
Their information.
3. It's 2. Some do wear more. Some have memory type things made up and leader values and stuff, but really it's 2. Anyone know why 2?
When they die, they just bring it down like a soldier.
Exactly. So what had happened is if a soldier died, I would take, so if I was a company commander, I would take one dog tag, I'd put it in my pocket. The other one would go on the soldier. Does anyone know where it goes? It goes in your mouth. That way they can identify you later. Okay? Very gruesome. You don't really want to think about it, but that's just how it's done. But it helps us identify who these soldiers are later on so that we can make sure that they get to the right family. Okay? Later on, as a commander, I would pull these dog tags, sometimes more than one, out of my pocket. And on the dog tags, this one doesn't have one, but they used to have their addresses and their next of kin. And I would write a letter to their wife, or I'd write a letter to their parents to let them know that their soldier was a brave man or woman. So this would have been on the soldier, and then this tag would have went on his casket. So these soldiers were put in caskets, and then they were brought back here to the States so that we could have an honorable service for them. So pass that around, and it has his name on it. Some other things that would have been in that tube was a memorial in his name. This one is for Leroy Dennis, and he believe it or not, was killed at Pearl Harbor. So this actually belonged to a soldier who died at Pearl Harbor. Does anyone know when Pearl Harbor was? The date.
77.
What year? You guys didn't think you'd have a history lesson today, did you? You're all being graded today.
1941.
Perfect. So this is basically what each family would receive by the President of the United States. So the President actually signed this. Who do you think was the President during that time in 1941? Boom. Kids all over it. And it says, in grateful memory of Leroy Dennis, who died in the service of his country at Pearl Harbor. He was on the USS Utah, which was the name of a ship. He stands in the unbroken line of patriots who have dared to die, that freedom might live and grow and increase its blessings. Freedom lives, and through it he lives, in a way that humbles the undertakings of most men. So this was something the President would have written to the family and delivered to them. So please pass it around. Be very careful with it. The next thing in the tube would have been the actual Purple Heart certificate. Again, this is something family could have framed, and this is for the same soldier killed at Pearl Harbor, and that just signifies the date that he died and the award of the Purple Heart. So pass that around as well. Now, like I mentioned, the government, within that box, in this case, you can see, and I'll pass this around as well, it's a Purple Heart case. Within these cases had the soldier's Purple Heart. And on the back, and I'll pass this around, is his name engraved. And that's very important, I'll tell you why here in a little bit. So I want you to envision parents opening this for the very first time. This, in its own way, became the last tangible item that a family ever received. What do I mean by tangible? They can touch it, smell it, and you really wouldn't want to smell a metal, but believe it or not, it might have smelled like the Army. And to wives and mothers, that might have meant something very important. But yes, it was the last tangible item that they ever received. And a lot of families across the country have confirmed that to us, that this was it. And in its own spiritual way, this medal became them. They broke it out for special occasions. What special occasions would you maybe bring this out and remember your loved one by? Birthdays.
Veterans Day.
Veterans Day, great one.
Memorial Day.
Memorial Day, Christmas. So this became very special to them. They had a special place for it in the home, on the mantle. Some wives carried these medals in their pockets every single day of their lives. Why would they do that?
To feel like that person is still with them.
To remember them. To remember their legacy. Did everybody get to see this? No? Come get it. Don't be shy. They would carry these every day in their pockets to remember their loved ones by. It became a symbol of who they were. It told them to keep moving on with their lives, regardless of the loss, and to live a productive life. Over time, unfortunately, things happen. They're called life. Raise your hand if you've ever lost something. It should be everyone, because we're all guilty of losing something in our lives. 802, what did you lose? Okay, that's a big loss, losing someone in your family. I'm talking more item-wise, like a piece of jewelry. What did you lose? Right there. Yeah. A watch. Whose watch was it? Was it just your watch? Okay.
I lost my iPod the day after I got it for Christmas.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Did you get a new one?
No.
Oh,
My mom
no.
told me not to bring it, but I did anyway.
Did it have your name on it?
No.
I can't help you.
I lost one of my favorite stuffed animals when I was little.
Okay.
That's the slides.
Okay.
I lost a rock from Afghanistan.
Okay. You, sir.
I've lost numerous pairs of glasses.
Glasses. You need strings so they don't fall off your head. Or get contact.
I lost a necklace on vacation.
Perfect. So a piece of jewelry that meant probably the world to you because it was your grandma's. Now how did that make you feel?
Horrible.
Horrible. Pretty bad, right? Everyone would feel that way if you lost something that meant so much to you. How would it make you feel if somebody returned it to you?
Great.
Pretty good?
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing with the foundation that I created called Purple Hearts Reunited. Through that name, so through this name right here, we're able to research who the veteran was and who his family was. And I'll pass this around right now so you can see it. So the first thing I do is I put Leon's name in a computer, and I'm able to determine what Army unit he served with and where he died. Unfortunately, he died in 1944 on August 7th. Does anyone know what August 7th symbolizes? Take a stab at it. Not him exactly. It has a lot to do with the theme today.
I'm thinking a wild guess. D-Day?
Nope. When was D-Day? That's a good date to know.
It was in 1949.
A little later.
45, before.
44, what date?
Yeah, I never looked at that. It was like, what date? In,
June.
I don't remember.
I
I'm going too bad.
D-Day, help him out. When was D-Day? June, what date? There's only 30, I think 31 days in June, 30? We'll get it eventually. It's within the first week.
First.
Nope. Close.
Fifth.
Close.
Sixth.
6. June 6th, all right? Remember that, D-Day. So anyone, August 7th. Anyone know what that date is? Okay, yeah, it was the first date that the Badge of Military Merit was awarded, August 7th of 1782. But in today's time, August 7th is National Purple Heart Day. Make sure you write that down and remember it next year. On August 7th is National Purple Heart Day. So if you know a Purple Heart recipient, you should acknowledge them on that day. So that's very rare that you see a soldier who was killed on that day. So believe it or not, we bought his medal in an auction. How do you think it would end up in an auction?
Well, Mr. D was telling us about this, like soldiers come back and they don't have enough money to provide, so some soldiers might sell them so that they have enough money.
Okay. Very rare, but it does happen.
Well, as you said, he died, so maybe his family, like, didn't have, like, the money, and that was why the flash was on it to sell it or something.
Okay.
They could have lost it and then someone else found it and tried to sell it off.
Okay. It was stolen. That's excellent. Believe it or not, there are two major ways that these medals are being discovered, and they're being discovered across the country. They're being found in old abandoned homes, old vehicles. Metal detector enthusiasts are finding them in the ground. Everyone knows what a metal detector is? So they're finding them buried. Believe it or not, a diver last year found a Purple Heart off the coast of Florida, about 25 miles in the ocean. So he was just diving one day and he found a medal. So these medals are coming up all over the place. Probably the primary way that these are being discovered is, believe it or not, soldiers often get married right before going to war. Why do you think that is?
They have a like that.
So if they do die, they say that they didn't get married.
It's a last minute love, okay? We all fall in love eventually in our lives, and for a lot of soldiers, they thought they weren't coming home, so they found a love within their life, they get married, and unfortunately, they don't come home, but some do. So a lot of these families, and a perfect example was a girl from Kansas, or basically a guy from New York, went to Kansas to do some military training and met this local girl in Kansas, and they got married 2 weeks before he left for war. He went to war, he died, he didn't come home. So she was presented with his medals and the flag that the young man in the back spoke about. So each of these families will get a flag, and they'll get the medals and the certificates. Where did she go after that? Where do you think she went to?
New York.
New York. Why? Tell his parents, but then she basically went back to Kansas because he had brought her home to New York to live with his family, and she didn't know anyone, so she went back to Kansas, and all his items were put in a box and put in the closet. they sat there for 60 years. Well, she never got remarried. She was brokenhearted, and she became a widow, and she never had kids. So those medals just kind of sat there until she died. What do you think happened after she died?
Someone else moved into that house and found them.
Okay, what happened to all of her items?
Storage, maybe?
Close.
They're thrown away because they were
Almost.
put into auction.
Put into an auction, all right? You've heard of an estate sale? So people came in, her family, her extended family, who never really knew their aunt, never really knew that she was married. They sold all the items to raise money, and those items ended up in an antique shop. My mom paid $500 for them. We were able to do the research and find that family living in Kansas and return that medal. Does that make sense? So those are an example of how we connect with these families. If you have a question, you've had your hand up for like the last 2 minutes.
I hope you don't mind me asking,
Yep.
but what happened for you, to you that made you eligible for a Purple Heart?
Okay, so I served in Afghanistan in 2009 and 2010, and a rocket, a 107 millimeter Katyusha rocket, which is about 4 feet long, about this big around, just happened to land in the room I was sleeping in. So it's not how you want to wake up, but essentially it exploded. It knocked me out. It cut my leg. It cut my back. I've lost hearing in both ears, so I can't hear about 2 decimals. Right now I'm okay, but as I get older, we lose hearing naturally anyway. So it's very scary to think about, but when I'm 45 or 50, I might have to get hearing aids early. I can live with that because I still have my life, I still have my limbs, I still have my wife, and I still have my family. So it's very lucky to walk out of that room alive. Unfortunately, not a lot of people have that luck, and in 2010 was the bloodiest year of the war in Afghanistan, and we lost 500 soldiers that year alone. So 500 people sacrificed their lives for me and you, so we should always be grateful for that. That answer your question? Go ahead.
Are soldiers who go MIA eligible for a Purple Heart?
Yes. So when soldiers go missing in action, typically it was your aviators. Your aviators would crash land somewhere and their bodies weren't really discovered. Some were never discovered. So initially the family would receive a telegram that says your loved one's missing in action, which gives you hope. You never know, they might still be out there. And typically about a year later from the date, they would officially declare that soldier deceased. And then at that time, they would have been awarded the Purple Heart.
What if the soldier didn't die and they survived for the year? Would they still pronounce them dead?
So they lived, but they pronounced them dead?
Yeah, like I didn't get what you meant.
Yep. That happens every now and then, like in Vietnam. They thought maybe they were missing in action. They never did discover them. They went ahead and called them deceased. And then later on, they discovered they were still alive. If that was the case, they would just say, hey, no, they're not deceased anymore, they're still alive. That happens very rarely. They're pretty confident and sure that that soldier is dead before they declare him deceased. That makes sense? So, go ahead.
I don't know if you can answer this, but it's kind of like, I don't know. If you're saying that it's not a good thing to get a Purple Heart, then why do they call it an award? Because isn't an award like something that is good to get? But like
It's a symbol of that sacrifice. It's a symbol saying that we as a government recognize the fact that you shed your blood or you sacrificed your life. So it's not really an award as like a good thing, but it is a way for our country to say thank you to that veteran.
Another question is, when you get a Purple Heart, is it, because I don't know if how you work as an army, I don't know if it's kind of like how a school runs, like is it like when you get something, you get kind of made fun of getting a Purple Heart? Just wondering, like, would people pick on you for getting that?
In some cases, yes. In the military, just like any sports team or even in school, you guys pick on each other in a good way, hopefully. Obviously, it's not good to bully anyone. But it's okay to josh each other or to hey, look at, where'd you get those shoes because they're all bright orange or something. In the military, we do, and that's a way of dealing with stress, is we pick on each other in a good way. That's why we call it the slow man's badge. You didn't run fast enough, so you got shot. It's just our way of acknowledging each other in a, I don't know, in a good way without saying, hey, I'm sorry, I love you. It's unfortunate you got hit. It's just our way of saying, we love you. You know, hey, you didn't run fast enough. You know, I'm glad you're still here with me. You know, I'm glad you're alive. That's how we pick on each other in a good way. But yes, it is an award, but it's a symbol. It's a symbol to honor and tell the world that you as a soldier have either shed your blood or gave your life. Does that make sense?
Like if you didn't die or anything, would your thing like still be sent in the mail, or would they just give it to you?
So my case, I didn't die. They just handed it to me in a ceremony. Still special to me, you know, to have a commander pin it on you. They'll pin it right on your jacket. And I gave mine to my mom. So my mom means the world to me. She got it framed and it hangs on the wall in her home. A lot of soldiers, and I stress to a lot of soldiers, theirs don't come engraved. So the government won't engrave the back of the medal. With anything that's personal in your life, get it engraved. Because if you do lose it one day, guys like myself can come along and maybe track you down and return it. So if you have something in your life that means the world to you, make sure you get it engraved so that it can be traced back to you one day if it is lost. What other questions?
If a family member went to the war and they didn't find his body and they declare him dead and they give the Purple Heart to the other family and they come back alive, do they take the Purple Heart away?
I've never heard of that happening before, but what you can do as a family is you can request an additional medal. So several families, you know, if they were married, the wife would have gotten a medal. The parents could have requested an additional medal, and so there was 2 medals. So they both had something that could memorialize that soldier. Does that make sense? Are you just yawning? Tired? What did I say about sleep? I'm 6'6". There you take it. I'm just playing with it. What other questions? So with this project, we've been able to return, how many medals do you think we've been returned to date?
4,000.
Wow!
100?
How many?
100.
100. Over 100, actually. So we've been all over the country returning these medals, and we've returned over 100 to date. So what we do for the families is once we identify them, we get all of the decorations the soldier would have been entitled to, and we get them professionally framed. Why do you think we get things framed? So it looks nice. What else?
It'll last longer.
Last longer.
Respect.
Respect.
It's harder to lose it.
Thank you. It's harder to lose. Obviously, I don't say that up front, but it's true. To lose something as small as a medal, kind of small, right? If you put it in a nice big frame, and these frames are literally like this big, it's going to be hard to lose, right? And families, once they see them in a good way, they start fighting over them. They fight over them because they want it on their wall. So they fight over it in a good way. You know, sisters say, hey, I want that. And I've seen families share the frame. So they'll say, I'll take it for 6 months, and then I'll let you have it for 6 months, so that they can display it in their homes. We get them professionally framed, free of charge, and then we travel to the hometowns to do these presentations. Why do you think we travel? Means more. Why?
Because it's sending around something
Okay.
I have a question.
Yep.
Is it true that like when you go to like Afghanistan or something, that people don't come back the same? Like,
Okay. Yeah. With any man or woman that goes to combat, you know, you see a lot of good things and you see some bad things. People deal with stress in their own way. Who here has been to a funeral before? Okay, someone that they knew, like a family member. All right, put your hands down. Raise your hand if you can go up to the casket and say goodbye. All right, some of you, put your hands down. Put your hand up if you don't even want to go in the room. Okay, So everyone deals with death and stress differently. There's some of us that can go up to their Uncle John and hold his hand in the coffin and say, I loved you, goodbye. And there's some of us that don't even want to go in the room, and that's okay. So imagine that in that environment. There's some people that just deal with bad things differently. So there's some of us that can put it behind us and keep moving on. And there's some of us that deal with it differently and need help to deal with that. So if you need help to deal with a stressful situation, who can you talk to?
I'm a guidance counselor.
Guidance counselor? Who else?
Somebody you can trust me.
Yep. Maybe your go ahead. Parents, maybe a loved one, a family member. You know, we all lose someone in our lives, or we all go through maybe a dog dying, a cat dying, and those are very difficult times. So you need to deal with that in your own way, and that's helpful if you talk to somebody. So if you are hurting, you need to speak up and talk to someone. And it's the same way with soldiers in the military. You know, we see bad things, we see a lot of good things, and we all deal with them differently. And it just helps if we can talk to someone and get through that. So I don't think it's any different from what we all deal with on a daily basis. Did I answer your question? Someone else had a question? You just killed the mood. What were we talking about?
Purple Heart.
Sending them, like how it.
Right, so what did we do back in 1944?
Send a telegram.
Send a telegram. So why would we travel today?
So it looks nice. And,
To make up for that telegram so many years ago. Very impersonal to send a letter to a family that lost someone. Now we're going to travel to their hometowns and we're going to do the ceremony in person. For a lot of these families, it was the very first ceremony they ever experienced. And it meant the world to them. A lot of times it brings those families back together again. Sometimes these families kind of lost their way after the loved one died. And we get to see families meeting together for the very first time, ages 3 years old to 93 years old, meeting for the very first time all around this medal return. So it's very special. A lot of times, too, these families have had to live with this loss all their lives, and to have something that meant the world to them reunited brings a little bit of closure to their lives at an older age. So that's why we travel and do these returns. Who had a question?
Has there been anyone that's ever like denied the Purple Heart?
Like a family?
Yeah.
Nope. Every family we return to has been very generous, very appreciative. My son, who's 14 months old, has more knitted clothes than he'll ever be able to wear in a lifetime. Because every one of those sisters, every one of those wives who are older, all they do is sit around. Now, it's not a bad thing, and they crochet and they knit. And my son has gloves and hats and sweaters. You know, we get Christmas cards every year. A lot of these families have adopted me personally because it meant the world to them to have something back that symbolized, you know, their loved one. So we've never had a family deny it. We've never come across a family who sold the items. There are military collectors out there that actively sell these. Who thinks that's a good thing? Good. How much do you think one of these goes for?
$12.
Too high, but possible.
400.
Pretty close.
450.
Too high.
300.
300. So the average posthumous Purple Heart, again, that's for the soldier who died, goes for $300 on the open market. $300. People trade these like baseball cards all across the country, and that's very sad because, again, what? It's a symbol of who? A veteran, right? A veteran who shed his blood or died for our country. If you can add history, little man, to it, maybe he was an officer, maybe he served in the 101st Airborne Division, it adds value to the medal. So yes, medals can go anywhere up to $1,000, $10,000. Who here knows who Audie Murphy is? Who's heard that name before?
I've heard it, but I don't know.
Okay, think World War II. Audie Murphy was the most decorated soldier in World War II, to include the Medal of Honor and about 17 other decorations for valor. His Purple Heart would go for around $100,000 on the open market, just because of who he was. So a lot of collectors believe that families sell these, and that's not the case. You know, it's either a long distant cousin that just didn't know what to do with the medal, or it's stolen. Someone mentioned stolen earlier. Believe it or not, people are breaking into homes and stealing these from veterans because they know how much they're worth. And that's pretty sad. I think someone would break into a home and steal a veteran's medals. And we've actually returned about a dozen of them. So we've been able to find them on the market, secure them, and then return them to that veteran in his 90s. And that meant the world to him. So, question?
Financially, has this been hard for you since you say that you don't like get money back from them, but you have to buy them all, and
Yep.
traveling could cost money too?
Yep. So we started a foundation, a non-profit foundation, which means we don't make money from this, but people can donate to the foundation. How much do you think an average medal return costs? $1,000. Why?
Because if you're traveling, say you wanted to, from Vermont, you want to go to like Alabama, you'd have to pay for the plane ticket, pay for the Purple Heart to buy. So,
Yep.
say if you.
I'm not a math major, so help me out. So these go for how much again? 300. Now how much do you think framing costs?
50,
200? 300?
400.
About $500. If you've had anything professionally framed, which most of you probably have never had anything professionally framed, but one day you will see, or ask your parents, it's not cheap. It costs around $500 to frame a set of medals. Then what? I have to what?
Travel. For
Travel.
a plane ticket.
Anyone bought a plane ticket in here? Probably not. Some of you? How much is that?
300.
Depends on where you're going.
Roughly.
Plane tickets for Germany.
So let's put all three of those together. That comes out to what?
1,200.
About average $1,000 per return. So do the math. If I've done over 100 returns, how much money is that?
100,000.
Who paid for that?
You?
And thankfully through some donations. Okay, so it's not easy. It has put a lot of financial burden on me, but I believe in it so much. I'm so passionate about it. It's going to be okay. And with anything in life, if you're passionate about something, you put your heart and your soul into it, you can accomplish anything. Because of what we've done across the country, money is now coming into us. So we're almost to the point now where we can do the returns for free. We have people donating frames to us. The Village Frame Shop here in St. Albans is a perfect example of a community coming to help a great project, working together as a team, and now they do all the framing for free. That's pretty unbelievable. I don't feel great doing it because we do roughly around 35 returns a year. So you do the math. If he's, what's 35 times 500? Pretty good chunk of money, right? So as I get extra funds, I give him money as many times as I can because I want to keep that relationship going. But he donates all the framing to this project. A lot of times we are now getting people across the country that are rescuing these medals for us. So we don't have to pay that $300. They're doing it and sending them to us so that we can return them. So right now we only have really travel involved as far as cost. Guess how many medals we get per week? Too high. I hope not. 2 to 3 medals a week in the mail. Can you believe that? We get 2 or 3 of these a week in the mail. How many medals do you think we currently have?
500?
400 medals currently at my home that belong to a soldier that we're trying to return. It's a very staggering number. Again, we can only do with my time about 30 a year. But we are looking for volunteers, old veterans, Vietnam era veterans, Korea War era veterans, that will basically travel for us and return these medals. Our goal, hopefully, shortly, will be able to return every single medal that we receive in a year. So if we get 100 medals within that year, we will return all 100. So, did I answer your question as far as cost?
How do you return them if like the back isn't engraved with the name?
How do you tell?
Wait, didn't you say before, I'm confused.
Sure.
Isn't there like medals where like some of their names aren't engraved?
So no engraving whatsoever?
Yeah,
Like the one I passed around, this one?
yeah.
So if we get one like this, there's nothing we can do. unless there's supporting documentation, so like an award certificate, or it was in an estate that belonged to a specific veteran, it's almost impossible for us to tell who it belonged to. However, we still do look for these, because believe it or not, the medal over time hasn't changed in the way it looks, but it has been changed in the way it's made. So in World War I, we used like resins, versus today we use plastic. So if George Washington's bust was to pop off, which a lot of medals we do receive just because wear and tear they're damaged, we need a medal from the original time to replace it, to fix it. So if I get a World War I medal that's damaged, I need another World War I medal to fix it. Does that make sense? So yes, we can't identify who the family was, but we can still use the medal to fix a medal that's engraved so that it looks nice when we present it to the family.
When I heard that there was this where you find them and return them, my great-grandfather was a World War II veteran, which got the Purple Heart. He died when a long time ago, but my grandparents lost the medal, like moving. So when I heard that you were doing about this, I thought, wow, that's cool. Didn't I get that?
Yep, I will give you a card after this. All you have to do is send me an email. I just need some basic information. We can research your grandfather and then figure out if he was entitled to that medal. If he was, we can get you a replacement. Or if his medal was engraved, we can add it to our list on our website. And if someone was to find it in the future, hopefully they Google his name, see that we're looking for it, they can return it. Other questions?
What process do you go through when trying to find someone that, if you say you have a medal that's engraved, what process do you go through to find that person?
So, anyone heard of Ancestry.com? Okay, that's a good research tool. You also have Fold3, Genealogy Bank. I have about 8 databases online that I can run a name through. Unfortunately, each database only gives me a piece of the puzzle. So after I get them through all 8, I kind of have the puzzle put together. It gives me about a page-long, detailed list of who he was. We start with their grandparents, go down to their parents, and then brothers and sisters. By that time, we can typically find someone that's still alive. If none of the brothers and sisters are still alive, then we have to go into cousins and nieces, which gets really difficult. Because typically there's like 20 cousins or nieces and nephews. Then it's really difficult to determine who gets it. You never want to see a family fight over the medal. So really it's first come, first serve. The first person I find, in my mind, is entitled to the medal, unless they don't want it and they say, hey, my brother should get it because he's ex-military. So families are really good with that, determining who should get the medal. But it takes me, on average, some families 5 minutes to find you. Some families are a little bit harder to find because they maybe live way out in the country. So they don't have access to the computer. They don't sign up for things. They just kind of live off the grid. Sometimes it takes us a year to find a family. So it's really specific to each family.
So your whole line of family has served in the military. Do you hope that your son joins the military?
Yeah. I'm a second generation paratrooper, so I jump out of planes. Who would jump out of a perfectly good airplane? This guy. I always want to see that tradition carry on, but it's really his decision to make. Just like it's any of your decision to serve your country. I would highly recommend that you do. It's made me the man I am today. To serve something greater than yourselves is always a good thing. And it doesn't have to be military. It could be the police, it could be fire, it could be a postman. Serving your country is what made us who we are today. And without people serving their country, we wouldn't have the freedoms that we do today. And we wouldn't be sitting in this room today if it wasn't for young men and women to volunteer to serve their country. I will support him if he does. I would be a proud father. Hopefully pin some airborne wings on him just like my dad did. I'd rather him be a Navy SEAL because that's cooler. But he can make any decision he wants. I'm not going to twist his arm. But if he serves, I'd be proud of him. other questions? Yes,
Is
sir.
there any way that we can help
Yes, sir.
as a class? Yeah.
Yeah, so we're actually working with the high school, and what I would like to do is make this school one of the very first Purple Heart schools in Vermont. Believe it or not, Vermont to date hasn't been very Purple Heart friendly, but what you can do as a class is write a short paragraph, a proclamation on why you think it's important to be Purple Heart supportive. You can put it in your own words, either separately or together as a class. It will go into a proclamation, and we can announce that at like an assembly here at school, and you guys can say you are the very first Purple Heart school in Vermont. And again, you can put history into that proclamation or just simply why you think it's important. So that's one way that you can help. And that would bring attention to not only St. Albans, but to your school and the community. Another way you can help is, does anyone like to go to graveyards? Probably not so much, a couple of you. How many remember how many Purple Heart recipients we've had in history?
1.8 million.
1.8 million. Now, do you think there was a database that has all those 1.8 million in there? There isn't, unfortunately. The government never kept track of every single soldier. So there's a program at the Purple Heart Hall of Honor. It's in Newburgh, New York, which was what? Whose command post was there? George Washington. You guys are learning. You guys are quick. And what they're trying to do is recreate that database. Of the 1.8 million, they've only got 190,000 enrolled. We have a long road ahead of us to get everyone enrolled. One way you can help as a community service project is to go to your local grave sites, your cemeteries, and look for Purple Heart graves. So if a veteran has a Purple Heart, on their headstone, you might see the abbreviation Purple Heart, so PH, or it might spell out Purple Heart. All we need from you is a picture of that headstone, and we can get them enrolled into the Hall of Honor. So it's another community project. Here in St. Albans alone, I think there's 13 cemeteries. I've already got the cemetery on the way out to the bay. There was about 6 that were in that cemetery alone. So another way you can help as well.
Have you gotten one?
What's that?
Have you gotten to the graveyard?
That's the only one I've been to.
The one on the Lake Road there?
Yeah, Lake Road on the left-hand side. I just had to stop there one day.
We'll get the rest.
Yeah, whatever you think is reasonable. And the last thing is you could sponsor a return. So if you as a school wanted to put together a fundraising event, again, you could raise $1,000. I think that's manageable. And I would give you full credit for returning one of these medals to a family. So you would be involved in that process. I would tell you everything you want to know about the family. I'd let you speak to the family. And then obviously provide you with pictures and things of the ceremony as it takes place. And we could do signs, we could do cards, we could present that to the family at the ceremony, and they would know that this school, your class, pretty much made sure that that medal returned to them. So those are the 3 primary ways that you can help us. Any other questions?
Which war did you serve longer in, Iraq or
Both were a year long. So Iraq, believe it or not, a lot of people say war is bad. It is bad, but it is a necessity. We've been fighting war since our existence. And it's because we want to preserve our freedom. Believe it or not, Iraq and Afghanistan are very beautiful countries. In Iraq, there's a lot of history. There's Babylon. Has anyone ever heard of ancient Babylon? A couple of you. There's the Garden of Eden. Everybody familiar with the Garden of Eden, where the Tigris and the Euphrates meet? There's a lot of history in these places. Afghanistan's the same. A lot of mountains, a lot of mosques and shrines. They're not bad countries. They're just some bad people living within them. Every time I went to Iraq or Afghanistan, the people were very appreciative that the fact that men like me wearing this uniform were there to preserve their freedoms. When we got to Iraq, women couldn't vote. Believe it or not, every girl in here could not show their face. You'd have to wear a mask or a hood because you weren't allowed to show your pretty faces. They didn't believe in that in Iraq. You wouldn't have any running water, no sewage. You'd have to use the bathroom in your own homes on the floor. Children, all of you, could not play in the streets because you might die from a bomb. Would you want to live in that place?
No.
So they were very appreciative that young men and women like myself went over there to give them that freedom. Women can now vote. You can show your faces. Children can play in the streets. You have running water and sewage, and that's a good thing. Unfortunately, there are some bad people out there that don't want to see that happen. They don't like the ideal that America is free. They don't like the ideal that we have what we have. And that's just a reality. And it's a good thing knowing that me and others, and hopefully some of you in this room one day, will stand up to that challenge so that we can maintain our freedom. The best analogy I can give you is I'd rather fight an away game than a home game any day of the week. So if I can go overseas and bring the fight to them, I'm going to do that for you guys. Because I don't want them to come over here and affect you. Any other questions?
When you were little, did you want to be in the army, or was it just kind of like?
I was born into the Army. My parents served. I lived on military bases, which is not always the best. In military you move a lot, so I didn't get to keep a lot of friends. So it taught me how to be independent, how to just survive on my own, if you will, without a lot of friends. I got to explore the world by moving. But it's a difficult life because you're always moving from one school to the next. It's not the greatest environment. To be honest with you, because I grew up in the military, I didn't want to serve in the military. But for me, my parents didn't make a lot of money. They could have put me through college, but it would have been very difficult. And I love my parents so much, I didn't want them to have that financial burden. So I joined the military at first for the college money. Believe it or not, the military does have some great programs for money for school. I would highly suggest taking advantage of that. You don't have to make the military a career. You can do 3-4 years, get the college money, and get out. That's what I thought I was going to do. I thought I was going to be an FBI agent. But then I fell in love with it. And I haven't looked back since. The military is my life. I love every day of it. I love serving the country, and I love serving the community. It's not for everyone, but it was for me. I never thought I would be here today when I was younger, obviously. But I'm glad I had that patriotic upbringing from my parents that made me the man I am today. That answers your question.
How long did you serve for?
I've been in for 16 and a half years, so going on 17 years. Anyone guess my age?
35.
Too old. Thanks.
25.
32.
25.
Who said 47?
31. 31.
27. I wish. That was last birthday. I'm 33. So I joined when I was 17. So I joined when I was in high school. And they still do it today. Basically, you go to basic training, you do your junior year. That summer, so instead of having a summer to myself, I went to basic training. Came home, did my senior year, and then went into the military. So I started very young. My parents had to sign a waiver basically saying your little boy can go off to the Army. But because of that, I've got almost 17 years in. I can retire when I'm 35, 36 years old. Can you believe that? 36 is pretty much still a young guy. I can start a new career and get another retirement. So again, I'm not telling you what to do, but it really did help me in my life. It just seems like yesterday I was going to basic training.
Even though you have a Purple Heart, do you want to continue to serve?
Do I want to what?
Continue to serve?
Continue to serve? Yeah. Oh, absolutely. One, I want to get my retirement benefits. But two, I love my country. I love talking to classes like this, not only in the military, but through this foundation. It's something that I can carry with me after I retire and continue to serve military families. To me, military families are the most important heroes in our country. Yes, it's really neat that soldiers go off to war, they fight for us. Believe it or not, they have families, they have children that worry. Is anyone here in a military family? I know there's one. So, has anyone got a parent deployed?
Yeah.
How did it make you feel?
Well, I was really little. I was little.
Okay, so you didn't really have any feelings. You just wanted to play with toys.
Yeah.
You know?
It was sad.
Feels sad, right?
You didn't know what time you were going
You miss them, you're worried. You know, anyone else have a parent deployed? How did it make you feel?
Not good.
Not good. So to me, you guys are the heroes. We as veterans couldn't do what we do without you. The support of our families, the support of our spouses, knowing that our families are protected, taken cared for while we're out there doing, you know, the good deed. And to me, to be able to serve you guys and give thanks to you means the world to me, and that's why this foundation was started. That we can serve families like you that spent many years worrying about their loved ones.
A lot of people that don't serve in the Army talk about how like, it's hard for you guys. Do you think it's hard, like personally, do you think it's hard like living off and like a payroll kind of like that? Because a lot of people say it's hard financially to make it like through
In the
like
military?
like with a military budget. Is it hard for you, do you think? Because a lot of people are saying that it's harder.
I can't speak for anyone else. I'm an officer, which means I basically went and got a college education and became an officer. We as officers get paid pretty well. My family, my wife doesn't have to work. Obviously she's raising my children. But we make enough money to where she doesn't have to work. I live in a nice house. It's not easy. I mean, it took me 17 years to get where I am today. It took a lot of hard work. I started at the very bottom as a private and worked my way up to a captain and soon major and hopefully colonel before I retire. The Army pays more today than they've ever paid. My father, who was in Vietnam, got $67 a month. I won't tell you how much I make these days, but I'm telling you it's 100 times that per month. So it's a good paycheck. I can't speak for anyone else, but everyone has their own financial struggles. But I think it's the best time to be in the military for pay-wise. And benefits. We get health care, free health care for my entire family. My wife, my son, we don't have to pay a dime. We also get housing allowance. Each month, just for housing, I get $2,200 a month. So on top of my paycheck, they give me an additional $2,200 a month. And that's a mortgage payment, so that's a payment on a house. They basically pay for my house. So to me, it's the best deal out there. You won't find another job in the state that matches those benefits. Anyone else? Anything at all, I'm not sure.
If these students are looking at the military, some of them, it used to be when I went to school, the kids who couldn't do anything else said, well, heck with it, I'll join the Army. And what we're talking to these kids is now, the Army just doesn't take everybody anymore. You got to do more than breathe. You have to be skilled because they've invested so much in the individual soldiers. So could you speak about sort of the, you know, what do you need? If they are looking at going into the Army, and you make it sound like a great career, and I believe it is, what should they be looking at? I mean, do grades count, that sort of thing?
They do, depending on what you want to do. So each one of you wants to do something differently. In the Army specifically, we have over 100 different jobs. That could be computers, you know, communications, intelligence. If you just want to be an infantryman, that's an option as well. But you have to have a certain level of intelligence to do some of the more sophisticated jobs. If you want to be a computer analyst, you obviously have to be fairly intelligent. So based off of your current grades, and when you graduate, you'll have to take what they call an ASVAB test to see where you are mentally. Based off those scores, then they'll tell you what options are best for you. As far as the role in the military, it's taught me life lessons that you won't get anywhere else. It taught me discipline, business marketing, business structure, how to manage a team. You know, I command over 100 people at any given time. That's a big responsibility. Most jobs you won't get that responsibility unless you're a CEO. At an early age, you're responsible for people. Some good success stories. You guys are a little bit young, but a good friend of mine, Steve Gagne, who's a staple in the community, took what he learned in the military and created a business.
came to speak last year.
Yeah, I won't tell you what that business is.
No, that's right, he talked about it.
He created 14 Star Brewing Company. Beer, they make beer. One day. But because of what he learned in the military, it taught him how to create a business. He had no idea what he was doing. And because of that, and the lessons he learned in the military, he's now a millionaire. So, same with me. I had no idea what I was doing with business. I took the lessons I learned in the military and created a non-profit foundation that's nationally known. I wasn't a businessman. I wasn't the smartest kid in school, but I used those tools to create something that everyone knows about. And to me, that's a big deal, and I owe that to the Army. Again, so I wouldn't say it has to be your career, but you can use it as a resource or a stepping stone to make your dreams come true. So take advantage of the resources and the initiatives they can give you, free college tuition, things like that, and use it to your advantage, and then say goodbye to the Army and do great things. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does, thank you. By the way, it's a great beer.
It's the best beer in Vermont. So.
Absolutely.
I've heard, because my mom's friend, her son's in the Army, and he says that training is really hard because you have to be really skilled. And I've heard that since it's hard, the majority of people are trying their hardest, and then when they're in war, they have a hard time because they've done so much.
They have a harder time or easier time?
He told me that they have a harder time because the reason they do it is to try and get in, but also since they're doing it, it's making their muscles hurt even more because they're not used to that much.
Sure. No, the military is going to push you beyond your farthest belief. They'll push you to your limit and further. And all they're doing is teaching you what you're made of. Believe it or not, the human body is very powerful. Again, you can do anything you put your mind and heart to, and sometimes more than you'll ever believe. Trust me, I've been there. When I thought I couldn't go an extra step, I went another 10 miles. You have 100 pounds on your back and you're walking 50 miles, you think there's no way. Your body can go that direction if you put your mind to it. And that's what the military is going to bring out. They're going to show you what you're made of down to your deepest core. And that's always a good thing, because as you go through life and you are faced with stress or a challenge, you already know what you're capable of doing. You already know what your body can do. And it's going to help you as you go down the road versus experiencing it for the very first time. Does that answer your question? But it's not that hard. It is hard. If you like to play video games and you don't do sports and you don't play outside, it's going to be a challenge. But if you like to get outdoors and run, it's going to be easy. It's not that difficult.
Would you suggest programs like JROTC?
I would, just so you can get an idea of what the military is like and to see if it's for you. It's a great program. They're going to teach you a lot of fun stuff. I know a lot of the programs do like rappelling and teach you how to march and play with some of the weapons, if you will. They'll teach you some introductory level things into the military. And if you like it, just keep going with it. Just see where it's going to take you. But if you don't like it, that's a good way to say, no, this isn't for me. Is that the cue?
Well, you were extremely interesting, and these kids will come up with, they'll be here Thursday.
Perfect.
So we're going to free, because I really hope and feel that we'll have you in again when we become a Purple Ribbon, Purple Heart School.
Yep.
So we will have you in again, and right now we're going to let you enjoy the rest of your life.
You may not have to go to work.
We would like to thank you for coming in on your busy schedule.
Thank you.
You will be hearing from us because we would like to become a Purple Heart School, and we want to make you an honorary USA.
Thank you so much.